Adam Mockler, I mean, it does stick in the gullet, doesn't it, that the only person to go to prison and the whole Epstein scandal is a woman.
Yeah, well, John said he thinks the people at the bottom might have destroyed the evidence, but the reality is the people at the top, like Pam Bondi, were the ones saying they had the list sitting on their desk.
Adam, right there, does something incredibly remarkable and incredibly good. He ignores the dumb question that Piers asked.
I mean, I'm looking at this photo of Jack Posobiec holding up the Epstein files. It says the Epstein files, phase 1. But where's phase 2? There's no phase 2. So I'm happy that influencers like Jack are admitting they were conned by the admin to cover up the sexual abuse of children.
10 out of 10.
Well, it's very upsetting. It's extremely upsetting to be brought in something like this.
He's accepting the framing that, yeah, I was used to cover up a file ring. Adam just said, you were used to cover up a file ring. And Jack's like, yeah, it's disappointing, but I was. No counterpunch at all, and no defense at all of the administration. Hey, folks, please like, comment, and subscribe. And make sure to check out my newsletter. Information is in the description. So this is the Adam Mockler appearance on Piers Morgan. And I think it's one of the best appearances I have of a left-wing person. That was my opinion going into it. We're going to examine it and why I think it was so effective. And in the process also, I think, get a chance to clown on a Trumpy like Jack Posobiec.
What's happened here? I mean, we were all led down a train of thought that there was going to be all sorts of stuff coming out about this Epstein case, the files, the names, the lists, accountability, and then boom, it's all disappeared.
Yeah, Piers, I mean, this is, as we would say in the military, unsat, completely unsat from Attorney General.
Can I just say, Posobiec is such a fucking loser. It's unsat. It's unsat. Stay frosty. He uses all of these like military terms and intelligence terms, and he thinks he makes them look awesome and cool. He's an enormous piece of shit loser. He was one of these dipshit influencers that they invited to the White House to parade his little binder. And so he's an incredibly unserious person. He's such a LARPer. And I just find it very, very satisfying that he's eating a little bit of humble pie.
General Pam Bondi, and this line about there being files that are currently under seal in some criminal case, well then great, let's go and get those unsealed as soon as possible. Look, I was brought to the White House under the pretense of a series of policy briefings that were going to be held, not just from the...
And the first thing that they do, right, and this is true of him, it's true of DC Drano, they don't like go to the actual thing itself. They defend themselves. We're serious, right? We're still serious. So the very first thing, you're on Piers Morgan, right? You're on Piers Morgan. He's asking you, hey, what gives with this shit? What gives with this shit? Instead of talking about the thing itself, he's like, okay, it's unsatisfactory. And this is how I'm not a humongous jackass. This is how I'm not a humongous jackass. So he's already coming in from a position of weakness. He's uber defensive. And I think Mockler smells blood in the water. He smells blood in the water here. Because obviously, the next question is going to be, why are you still supporting the regime, and why were you used as a prop? And so Posobiec is trying to preempt that by saying, no, I was lied to. Well, oh wait, you were lied to by the administration? So none of this is looking good. Tactically, I think it's a mistake for Posobiec to be like focusing on defending himself because of the binder thing, but the binder thing gets to them. The binder thing really, really gets to these people. If you have a picture of them holding up the binder that says phase 1 of the Epstein files, I guess there won't be a phase 2, by the way. We have a phase 1, not a phase 2. But when you reply to their tweets with the binder pictures, it really gets to them. They're apt to block you over it. And so the very first thing on national YouTube, on Piers Morgan, he's asking you about the thing itself, and he's referencing the press conference and how he was duped.
But we had the vice president came in, the president came in, Bobby Kennedy came in. So we had a rotating series of people from the administration, Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State. And then nobody told us prior to this that the Epstein files would be anywhere.
We weren't told. We're victims. Like, it's such a position of weakness. It's like, please don't hit me. He has his belly up, right? And he's being uber defensive, just like these other Twitter losers. Because they know that they were used as suckers. And independently, right? These aren't people that stand on business, that hold the administration to account. They're just propagandist shills. But they don't like the heat. They don't like the heat of having their little minions, their little sycophants, start to be like, hey, why were you part of this cover-up? Why are you a pedo?
Even on the agenda for that day, and it was really sprung as a surprise to all of us. We get handed these binders, and then before we even have a chance to look into them, we're hauled out actually in front of the cameras that were all there because...
Like, imagine you're someone who's not read in on this whole little press conference, and you had that little intro. Maybe in the intro they reference the binder thing. Oh, they do. Okay, never mind. So now it doesn't seem as defensive. It looks like they did reference it. But even then, I wouldn't focus on it if I'm Posobiec. But it looks like and Piers Morgan, you know, he's always doing this kind of shit. He loves to get people to condemn shit, or to make people embarrassed. So I don't think it's as bad because they started that way. But I still think tactically it's a mistake for you to focus on that and to make it all about yourself.
Prime Minister Keir Starmer was visiting the White House that day, and it just so happened that they were all in front of the West Wing. And by the time that we have the ability to actually go through them, well, lo and behold, we find out that it's all information that was completely already in the public domain. In fact, some of the information that was in the public domain was more extensive than what was
Then what's the logical conclusion here, Jack? Why would they do that to you? They're either impressively incompetent, or they're trying to do a cover-up and use you for it. Or both.
To us on that day. So the whole thing, obviously, I think, as you say, is a cock-up. I hope I'm using that phrase correctly. I'm not entirely familiar with it, but that certainly feels...
Look at that little shaking in the head.
Feels like what happened here, and we don't have the accountability that was spoken of.
Giga Chad Adam Mockler, just like that direct stare. He's not moving, he's not anxious, just looking right at the camera.
Don't have the releases that were spoken of, and it's indefensible. It's indefensible that the answers aren't there when so much was promised.
Brian Shapiro, I mean, look.
It's indefensible is weasel language as well, right? It's indefensible. We want you to use stronger terms than that, Mr. Posobiec. We want you to be like, it's corrupt. Why don't you say it's obviously corrupt? It's obviously corrupt. That's what you would say if it were Biden. It's obviously corrupt. These people are criminals. They're obviously like... the language is such weasel.
It's perfectly possible, indeed it looks increasingly likely, that Epstein did indeed just commit suicide. What is not perfectly possible, to my cynical eye about this, is that he was the only person, other than Ghislaine Maxwell, who's been imprisoned, who was ever up to criminal activity on his island and other places.
It's not possible, says Piers Morgan. What does that even mean? It's not possible. I don't even understand what that means. It's clearly like possible, but you're saying I don't believe it. Okay, so what do you believe? You think it's a cover-up? And in which case, if you also think it's a cover-up, why aren't you calling on Trump to resign?
It just stretches credulity. But nobody, it seems, is ever going to be held accountable other than him, who evaded accountability by dying, killing himself, or Ghislaine Maxwell, a woman. So none of these other men.
A woman? That's not good enough.
Who were linked to this are ever going to be even remotely held accountable. It's just disappeared.
Yeah. Well, what I would say, Piers, first of all, when Haba did your show, where did she get that information from? Where did that come from back in February?
A wonderful point here. Alina Haba, who I think now is like the acting U.S. Can you imagine? They made Alina Haba acting U.S. Attorney of New Jersey, or one of the districts of New Jersey, whatever. Can you imagine like how far we have fallen? But anyway, Alina Haba was talking it up too. It wasn't just Pamela Bondi. It was also Alina Haba being like, yeah, there's some bombshells here. I can't wait. Like, why was she doing that? And it's a wonderful point here. And again, Piers, I love Piers' little squint, little stank face. He tries to copy Trump a little bit.
I would also say to Pam Bondi, she lied on Fox News, or maybe she was telling the truth. She said she had a list that was on her desk, Piers. Where did that list go? Was she lying? Was that made up? And I'd also say thirdly, and I know this is something that Jack probably doesn't want to bring up, but the fact of the matter is that Jeffrey Epstein's on audio saying at one point Donald Trump was his best friend. We also know that Donald Trump was on the Epstein flight log 7 times. We learned that in the Maxwell case. So I don't think it's a stretch to say maybe Donald Trump might be somewhere in these files. Maybe. We don't know that for sure. But
also, Elon Musk's the shadow president said he was. Now, he also said Steve Bannon was, so, your mileage may vary.
If it was the other way around, and if it was Joe Biden that was best friends with Jeffrey Epstein at one point, that's all Jack and MAGA Republicans would be talking about. I think Donald Trump is on this list, and I think Donald Trump is in these files, and I think the Trump administration is hiding something.
I mean, what is extraordinary, I think, Brian, is that it all seems to have gone incredibly quiet from the moment Elon Musk started dragging Trump's name into the Epstein case when they fell out in posts on his X platform. And he's carried on overnight doing more posts, not directly linking the president, but saying what the hell has happened here effectively. But he was the one that ignited the Trump link again. You do wonder, is that involved here? Has Trump basically thought this is just going to be a lot of bad publicity here, let's just get rid of it?
Yeah, well, I'll say this, Piers. Anytime somebody says something about Donald Trump that might not be true, Trump always threatens a lawsuit. Why is it that Donald Trump didn't threaten to sue Elon Musk when Elon Musk said that Trump was all over the Epstein files? I find that to be very, very interesting. Bill Maher could call Donald Trump the son of an orangutan, and then Trump will file a lawsuit.
Because it's a fact, right, that Trump is in the Epstein files. If what you mean by Epstein files are any of the government documents linking Epstein to anyone in any of Epstein's conduct related to the investigation, right? Like, of course he will. Again, I'm so fixated on this point, but the terminology here is uber important. And people are knowingly equivocating on the term Epstein files, I think. Knowingly equivocating because, yes, Trump is on the Epstein files. If what you mean by Epstein files are the files related to Epstein. But that doesn't necessarily imply, though it is what is trying to be implied, that he was doing something criminal there. But yeah, no, that's maybe one of the reasons why he didn't sue him is, one, it would bring attention to it. So there are a bunch of good answers here about why Trump wouldn't sue. But all of them, I think, relate to a sensitivity or betray a sensitivity to the Epstein matter. And the fact that Trump now is saying, let's move on. Who is this Epstein guy? We don't even know if Epstein is real, I think also speaks to that sensitivity.
About that, why wouldn't he file a lawsuit against Elon? Maybe Elon is telling the truth, and maybe Elon knows some things that the general public does not know. I tend to believe Elon on this one.
It's certainly intriguing. John Kiriakou, what do you...
This guy's a little bit kooky, by the way. He's like a former CIA person who says a bunch of wacky stuff.
What do you think has happened here? I mean, Epstein, one of the most infamous cases of the last 20 years, of the century, arguably. So many famous, powerful, rich people whose names were dragged into this and were clearly in attendance at his parties and on his island and so on. And then here, now suddenly...
these guys don't know shit, right? They don't know shit. The people at the parties, yeah, there were parties. But that's how people talk. Like, the parties are undisputed. There's video of Trump at a party with Epstein, but you don't know shit, right? So, like, why are you talking out of your ass like you know for certain that it's not possible the official story is true? I just love when Piers does this. Like, he goes, it's so beyond possibility that something is... And he also gets fixated like I do.
Led the media around the world into a lava of excitement about it's all going to come out and you're going to get all the details. Now, bang, it's just been shelved.
Based on my own experience at the CIA, there's very little daylight between the CIA and the FBI. The CIA said there was no torture program. That was a lie. No international renditions. That was a lie. No secret prisons. That was a lie. MK Ultra documents were all released. That was a lie. The CIA didn't try to recruit Oswald. That's a lie. These organizations that make up the so-called deep state, and we can have that debate whether or not you want to call it the deep state, but they all lie. They're trained.
This is an inherent problem with the position that Jack Posobiec and these other influencers are in now. And I've talked about this before, which is they're used to critiquing the deep state. Now they are the deep state. And so now Jack is in a position where he has to try to defend or find some kind of third way to have a position that doesn't implicate all of his friends, because they're now in control of the deep state, literally. But people who are more like full-time conspiracists and aren't partisan propagandists, as opposed to, I would say Jack Posobiec is more of like a directional a partisan conspiracist, as opposed to this kook who is not as much of a, I would say, partisan conspiracist and just more of a full-time conspiracist. He has the unfortunate position of being on the defense when he's inculcated and sort of traded on the same deep state conspiracies, deep state skepticism that these people have traded on. But now, because they are an outgrowth of the administration, find themselves in the unfortunate position of trying to defend the very deep state that they've attacked for basically the majority of their careers.
To lie. And so I don't even think that we should blame the likes of Kash Patel and Dan Bongino. I think people probably at a lower level destroyed whatever they could destroy and let the lie go up to the very top.
Complete conjecture, right? Like, I think people probably deleted evidence who are lower level people. Zero evidence of that, right? Like, just no evidence of that whatsoever. Zero evidence. And by the way, let's not forget who was in charge of the DOJ when this shit was coming to light in the first place. It was Trump. And so what these people try to do sometimes is they try to maintain their narratives. Oh, it's still explainable. Oh, and you can still be friends with Kash Patel. You can still trust Kash Patel. But he's just like, I think what probably happened is X, but no evidence of that, right?
And hope that this whole thing just goes away. If there are no documents to implicate famous people, then it'll eventually go quiet. And my guess is in 30 years or 50 years or whenever it's going to be, at least some of the truth will probably be released.
Adam Mockler, I mean, it does stick in the gullet, doesn't it, that the only person to go to prison in the whole Epstein scandal is a woman.
Yeah, well, John said he thinks the people at the bottom might have destroyed the evidence, but the reality is the people at the top, like Pam Bondi, were the ones saying they had the list sitting on their desk. So it seems.
So Adam, right there, does something incredibly remarkable and incredibly good. He ignores the dumb question that Piers asked. Piers says some stupid shit about, oh, it's crazy that a woman was the only person indicted. And Adam, like a fucking G, just ignores the dumb shit that Piers said and talks about the thing that he wants to talk about anyway, right? It seems like he's responding to Piers in some way, and Piers even like, yeah. But he just ignores the framing, and it's just such a fucking Giga Chad thing to do. Just ignore these fucking people. They don't care. They're just like, they're just saying random shit. Say what you want to say. If you're push, okay, then you can address what they're going to say. But have a strategy, have a plan, and he is on the attack right away. So I already love where this, I'm forgetting why I like this so much, but even as he starts there, right? He's not looking antsy. He's, very clear. He's not seeming defensive, and he's ignoring the question. Very Giga Chad.
People at the John said he thinks the people at the bottom might have destroyed the evidence, but the reality is the people at the top, like Pam Bondi, were the ones saying they had the list sitting on their desk. So it seems like that deep state you referred to, the party that promised to defeat the deep state, very quickly became the deep state. Here's the
and again, immediately, right? He has a plan. He's not meandering. The target is Trump. The target is the Republican Party. He's got a game plan on. And he has other people nodding. He has Piers going, yeah, because he's speaking in the language of these nuts, the deep state nuts. So again, I just think very excellent there, the framing.
The party that promised to defeat the deep state very quickly became the deep state. Here's the timeline in my eyes. Pam Bondi says, I have the list on my desk right here. They're rather silent for a few months. Then Elon Musk says Trump is in the Epstein list. Then within weeks, apparently the list is gone. I mean, I'm looking at this photo of Jack Posobiec holding up the Epstein files.
Amazing. Amazing, right? On this platform, you don't need to just stick to the basics, right? The basics of the most out there, the most obvious, the most known about instances of Epstein, and connect them and paint this little tapestry, and then immediately at one of the other contestants. I really love it.
Weeks, apparently the list is gone. I mean, I'm looking at this photo of Jack Posobiec holding up the Epstein files. It says the Epstein files, phase 1. But where's phase 2? There's no phase 2. So I'm happy that influencers like Jack are admitting they were conned by the admin to cover up sexual abuse of children.
10 out of 10. Now, understand what the game is here, right? This is a game. This entire thing is a game, and Adam understands that this is a game, right? In reality, things that Adam said, they're only loosely connected, right? He goes, you know, it's the people at the top, not who have a problem as well. And also, let's do a timeline. The timeline is, and the timeline isn't really serving the secondary point of Jack Posobiec being used as a tool, as a propaganda tool, right? Like, he's just using his time to shit on the administration and to implicate Trump and his cronies, the senior staff, and then to talk shit about Jack Posobiec and put him on defense. Now, these ideas are loosely connected in that they all relate to the same general topic, but he's not putting forward some like logical, coherent argument. He's just hitting his points because this is a game, right? This is a signaling game. This is not an actual debate. When you go on Piers Morgan, the point is the posturing and whether you're on offense, whether you're on defense, and whether you're able to be pithy in what you're saying. And Adam critically understands the assignment, right? Adam understands the assignment. And so he starts by saying, you know, clearly Pam Bondi's part of the deep state. You're part of the deep state. Let's look at the timeline, the most embarrassing parts of the timeline. And also, Jack, you're an asshole. That's essentially what he just said here. And I totally think that this is the right approach on a show like Piers Morgan. And he's in and out in 30 seconds. And people are like, wow, right? Like, I think that's a wonderful statement. It doesn't matter that it's not like a logical, coherent argument. That's all. He knows what he's trying to do there. It's a different kind of thing than when you're on Tim Pool making these arguments. When you're on Piers Morgan, it's much more about signaling, much more about posturing, much more about hitting your points. Okay? And so I just think that's a wonderful, wonderful answer. And let's see what he does with it.
But where's phase two? There's no phase two. So I'm happy that...
And notice also, by the way, I already talked about this. He completely ignored what Piers said. He completely ignored Piers' like gender framing. Like a lesser person, like me, by the way, I'm not saying I'm lesser, but I might have like answered the question because I'm so like used to answering questions. Sometimes I am more thoughtful about the framing. I think that oftentimes I can be thoughtful with framing, but I think one of my big problems is I answer the questions when I'm on these kinds of platforms, and I'm like very inclined to immediately answer the question. But again, I just want to stress, one of the best things Adam did here is completely ignore Piers and just get his little hits in and do what I was going to say do anyway. It's like what a politician like answers a question on the debate stage. People go like, why isn't he answering the question? It's a different game. And so, yeah, 10 out of 10 answer from Adam, and putting Jack on the back foot. Let's see what happens.
Influencers like Jack are admitting they were conned by the admin to cover up the sexual abuse of children.
And again, he has probably some aspects of what he's saying pre-planned, but he's modular, right? He's flexible. He references something that this guy, John, whatever the K last name guy says, in the first part of his answer. And then he references something actually true in the last part of his answer that he couldn't have planned Jack was going to say. Or maybe he thought maybe he would, but he's like, I'm glad that Jack is now admitting, as he did at the start of the conversation, that he was being used as a propaganda tool in Jack's own framing to cover up the abuse of children. Just a beautiful way to put that in just like a very concise way. Also being flexible and modular and actually incorporating the answers of the other people on the panel. I just think it's just a wonderful answer. And also the fact that it's short. Brevity is the soul of wit. I'm not very brief. I'm very expositional, and I go on for on and on and on like I'm doing right now. So yeah, just great work.
Yeah, Jack, I mean, do you feel angry? Do you feel you were used in some way?
And by doing this, right, he lets Piers loose. Piers is like a wild card sometimes on these panels. You have to actually use Piers because Piers wants to engage. Piers is not just a potted plant. He is a debater. And you have to think about these things when you're going on these panels, that it's not just about your other co-panelists. It's about using Piers. And Adam is sicking Piers on Jack. And so that whammy is now being kind of like, it's being bolstered, the credibility and the optics of it, by the actual host, who then is taking his precious time to needle Jack even further, putting Jack on the defense from two different people. And that wouldn't happen necessarily if Adam didn't target the last part of what he said, because it has to be the very last thing you say to guarantee or to, have the maximum possibility that Piers will pick this up, but he really does open Jack up here by incorporating by targeting his last question at Jack, and thereby making everyone think about that. People watch these debates not just for the actual substance, but because of the inter-drama, like when Cenk is losing his mind at someone, or when there's like beef between two different people. And so I think it's very smart to target your attacks, not just at Trump, but the other panelists. And that will get play in terms of Piers, because Piers wants to egg that on for views and clicks, but also it will engage the other panelists to target their remarks to you and possibly give you more airtime as well. So yeah, I'm overanalyzing this, but I just think it was very effective.
Well, it's something. It's very upsetting. It's extremely upsetting to be brought in something like this, to think that you're going into a situation where, hey, we're finally going to get some of these answers that we all want.
Defensive. Yeah, it really sucked to be used as a pawn. It really sucks to be a fucking shill. It really sucks to be played for, to defend. And the way he's doing it, he's accepting the framing that, yeah, I was used to cover up a file ring. So it's just, this is not smart from Jack. He looks a little out of it. He looks a little bit dazed. He's not on his game at all.
Is all about getting justice for the victims here, the actual victims. And I keep going back and looking over the different pieces of this story. What was Prince Andrew disgraced for? Why did he go up on this huge interview and then lose all of his
ramble
titles and all that, and he's losing his security now, I hear. And why did we go all the way around, name after name after name? But at the end of the day, it's actually about the victims. And do you really mean to tell me that all of those victims were questioned and all of the things that they said were investigated and were run down? Because it just doesn't really feel like that's been done here.
Not at all contesting the accusation that Adam just did, right? Adam just said, you were used to cover up a file ring. And Jack's like, yeah, it's disappointing, but I was. No counterpunch at all against Adam, and no defense at all of the administration.
Talking of Elon Musk, Brian, just to bring you in again here. So Musk is now simultaneous to all this. Obviously, this flame out with Trump is gathering momentum. He's now...
Doobie says, seems like Jack knows he's on very unsteady ground here. He'll keep poking around the edges until he can find a distraction. Yeah, it just, he is... inherently, maybe he recognizes he's coming on from a position of weakness, but there's zero counterpunch, and Adam's attack just lands effectively, and he basically accepts the framing and rambles for a second about Prince Andrew, and then yeah, basically this is the administration sucks.
Now announced the launch of a new political party, the America Party. Third parties have had a few instances in modern American history. They never tend to get very far, but we've never had the richest and most successful businessman in history launching one, who's got $300 billion and happens to own one of the biggest social media platforms, on which he has 200 million followers. He's not just your average third-party guy, is he? How interesting is this, and how damaging could this be, particularly to Donald Trump and the Republicans?
I think it certainly hurts Republicans and Donald Trump more than Democrats. But I would also say what you mentioned, this is the richest man in the world. With money comes a lot of power. This has been tried in the past many a times, but it hasn't been tried with someone with the money and the power that Elon Musk has. But I think the question we need to ask ourselves now is this just another phase that Elon Musk is going through? And then when this blows over, if it ever does, between him and Donald Trump, will he just move on? Or is he really, truly serious about this? There are a lot of people that didn't think that he was ever going to buy Twitter, now X, and he ended up doing that. So, will he do this? Will he continue this? And in 6 months from now, will we still be talking about this? I would venture to guess probably so. It sounds to me like Elon Musk is serious, and this will be very damning, in my opinion, to plenty of MAGA Republicans out there.
Yeah, and Adam, what this all seems
to... So they've now pivoted to the America Party, and let's see how Adam handles the question directed at him.
Center around is he was brought in, obviously, to run Doge, to reduce government overspending and waste. And at the same time, Trump was launching the big, beautiful bill, which many people think is going to add trillions to the debt. The two were clearly incompatible bedfellows. And that's led to Musk going. Now, Trump talks about EV car mandates being one of the catalysts for the falling out or whatever. But it's probably as simple as one person wanted to slash government spending and the other one wanted to bring in policies which are highly likely, certainly in the short to midterm, to increase the national spending and debt.
So he's asked a very kind of intricate question about the fallout and is it based on this kind of policy disagreement? Let's see how he handles it.
There's the clash. How serious do you think this is going to get?
I don't think you should understate the extent to which Jared Isaacman, the NASA candidate, being slashed, also pissed Elon Musk off.
Right.
He was really mad about Jared Isaacman. What I find funny about all of this is that Elon Musk is now leveraging the same mechanisms that he used to get Trump elected just a few months ago to now start a third party designed to undermine Trump's coalition. So the attention economy that he has with Twitter, he's going to leverage that. The vast wealth, he's going to leverage that. As to the question of how serious this is, I actually disagree with Brian. I think in 6 months, Elon will be on to the next thing. He doesn't seem to have the steady hand needed in politics to carry through a long-term agenda, and we saw that with Doge.
Well, there might be another.
I think a very erudite answer. I think a very again, concise answer. Answering every aspect of the question. Not a ton of room here to launch an attack at Trump or at Jack specifically, and so I think he handled that very well.
Another reason, which is that shares in Tesla are tanking, down 7%, I think, at the start of regular trading today. Now, that might just be a market reaction. It may recover, but certainly recent numbers for Tesla have not been good. John, what do you think of this? I mean, it's not an intelligence issue, but as an American, what do you feel about now the potential for a third party by somebody who's actually got the means to make it significant?
Well, it wasn't too long ago that Ross Perot was able to buy 30-minute blocks on literally every network to promote his own candidacy and got something like 19%, which was very, very respectable for an independent presidential candidate. But it didn't lead to anything. With Elon Musk, there's nothing behind it but money. There's nobody running in the state legislatures, nobody running for Congress and whatever it's called, the American Party or some silly name like that. There's nobody running for the local school board or the water commission that's going to be the roots of this new party. I think that this is just kind of a vanity project. And I have to agree that I think in 6 months, some shiny object is going to distract Elon Musk, and we're not going to even hear about this party anymore.
No, that was a terrible response. Bring up Doge, increasing the deficit, cutting disaster response, make it a political. I can ask ChatGPT for an answer. He gave, shaking my head. I just don't think that there's. This is kind of a boring part of the discussion. I agree. I like the first answer better, but I mean they're here to discuss Epstein, and he was just giving his honest take about what was incentivizing Elon Musk. Yeah, maybe he could have gotten some additional points in there.
Jack, what do you feel about this? A lot of people on the MAGA side of Trump's support were pretty dubious about Elon Musk to start with. A lot of them thought, well, this guy was a Democrat, and now he's come over, and maybe he's just trying to buy his way into power, get Trump elected, and use that to benefit all his companies, which obviously do.
Another thing, Adam here, I think one of the reasons why I'm not offended by that answer that he gave, one, I think it was, a sound argument or whatever, or it was based in facts or whatever. But he's coming across, I think, as a straight shooter. He's disagreeing where he needs to with the other lefty on the panel. He's offering some nuance. So I don't think that everyone needs to be like me and be this kind of shrill partisan. But again, who knows?
Have benefited from that association, but now it's gone the other way, and he's clearly trying to punish Trump and punish Republicans in launching this third party. What do you feel about the politics going on here?
Well, I think the politics that everyone said, and I broadly agree with everyone's take so far on here. I think this is a way to put leverage on President Trump, to put leverage on the party as we go towards the elections and then determining the swing of things. Because, look, people are saying, what about the presidential race and Ross Perot? And certainly with the tight margins that we saw in the 7 swing states, you could play a role there. But look at the midterms right now. With congressional majority in the House being as small as it is, you would only need to flip a couple of seats, run a couple of spoiler candidates in a few of those tight races, and you could easily flip the House one way or the other. So what it does is right now, today, is buy him much more leverage than he even had before, and he can do that without even running a single candidate anywhere. And I think he'd be much more successful with a project like this at the state level, at the House level, and at the Senate level than at the presidential level. And he can do so quite immediately.
I mean, obviously, you've got a massive clash of two gigantic egos here, and people used to getting their own way.
Two alphas. This is how two alphas communicate. This is what like Posobiec was telling us like a few weeks ago. He's like, everyone who's reading into the Elon and Trump, the Trump feud, this is just how two alphas communicate. I think that Jack Posobiec tweeted something like that. It reminds me of, do you guys have you seen the 13 Days or whatever the movie is about the Cuban Missile Crisis? This is President Kennedy communicating with Chairman Khrushchev. This is communication. Yeah, you can easily flip the House. These people are nuts. Legitimately insane.
Do you think, I can't see them really making up from this. I mean, Trump called him a train wreck last night. Elon's been hammering away.
True, and I think it's a great point from Piers, which is essentially that individuals who are trying to unify everything, I've said this today, and be like, everyone's still friends, everything's still compatible, the theories still stand, everyone could still be telling the truth and be in good faith, and this is just an honest disagreement. Like, those people need to go away. There is no unifying theory that makes all of your favorite sacred cows still viable, that makes it so that everyone's still friends.
Dismissing his big, beautiful bill as a total disaster that will bankrupt the country. It's very hard to see how they make up here, isn't it, Jack?
Well, I would say never count anything out. I mean, you've seen President Trump
never say never. Like, this is the kind of copium. I mean, maybe Elon will bend the knee again to Trump, but it's pretty hard to do at this point to imagine Elon having some major part of the administration anymore after you basically called Trump a pedo numerous times.
To make friends or allies of rivals in the past, and he certainly has the ability to do so, sometimes even against the wishes of MAGA, but that's certainly his prerogative. For Elon, absolutely, he's got a track record of moving from one thing to the other, but if he sees perhaps a path forward from a business perspective, look, keep in mind, he's still got to deal with the government in terms of a lot of the contracts for his companies, in terms of Department of Defense, in terms of NASA, in terms of Tesla, so he's going.
I interpret this statement a little differently maybe than you guys do. Maybe I'm off here. But I kind of interpret this statement as Jack Posobiec fence-sitting a little bit and keeping his options open. Trump's an old man. Perhaps Elon bends the knee, and perhaps Jack Posobiec needs to play for the super MAGA Trump side of the Civil War. And maybe this all gets resolved and everything's unified, perhaps. Let's say, copium. But this, to me, feels like he's keeping his options open. He's planning for a post-Trump situation potentially, and he's trying to be careful about who he's offending.
Going to need a lot of this going forward. And I think whether they like it or not, they're stuck together.
He was friends with Epstein.
Whether they like it together, they're stuck together. And now look what Adam does.
He was friends with Epstein. He'll be friends with Elon.
Oh my God! Owned.
What was that?
He was friends with Epstein. I'm sure he can be friends with Elon Musk.
He actually helped Epstein be prosecuted. He was the only person who was involved, kicked him out of the Epstein.
He helped Epstein be prosecuted. Okay.
You know all this, like it's just a very.
Have you heard of Alexander Acosta, the Florida district attorney, who was
like your little?
Oh, he got under his skin. Look, it's delicious. Well done here, Adam.
You heard of Alexander Acosta? You know who that is?
You're like, oh, I got it. Look at me, like I'm the guy from Third Eye.
You know who Alexander Acosta is?
No.
I'm the guy from Third Eye Blind or whatever. I don't even understand that reference, you boomer. Like, what is he even saying here?
Oh,
you know who that is?
You're like, oh, I got it. Look at me, like I'm the guy from Third Eye.
You know who Alexander Acosta is? You were duped to cover up sexual abuse of children.
Trump.
And he goes back to his talking point, which I think landed in the first part of it, and he's totally getting under his skin. He's totally antagonizing him. Not only is he playing it up for views, which is great, I think he's succeeding at undermining and getting Jack triggered.
You were
kicked him out of Mar-a-Lago. Donald Trump was the only one who went to investigators and said, "I will
Piers,
work
do you know
with
who
you
Alexander
against
Acosta is?
Epstein."
Can
This
I-
has been litigated a
Can I just add
million.
And
something?
look, smart again, involving Piers, because Piers wants to be involved, right? Piers wants to be part of the conversation. Directing that to Piers, as opposed to Jack Posobiec, is a smart way to get airtime, right? So again, he's playing this field, I think, exceptionally well especially for a young kid. Young kid. I say young kid. He's a young man.
Been litigated a million
First of all,
times.
Can I just?
well,
can I
Brian, I'll
just-
come to you, but Adam, just explain what you're talking about.
Yeah, really quickly. Alexander Acosta was a Florida district attorney. You can look this up.
He was a Florida U.S. attorney, all right? But this is me. I'm a stickler.
He knew both Trump and Epstein. He was appointed as a Secretary of Labor under Trump and had to resign in 2017 because people found out that he mishandled the Epstein case in 2007 and let Epstein get an illegal plea deal. Epstein was then able
Wasn't an illegal plea deal. Again, these are all just me being a stickler, right? I think ultimately he's hitting the right notes. He's like, Trump hired this guy who gave a sweetheart deal, and this is all true too. And Jack knows it, and I'm sure Piers actually knows this as well. And he's just getting airtime. I think that was basically selected by Piers. That probably wouldn't have happened if he didn't direct his comments specifically to Piers.
Epstein case in 2007 and let Epstein get an illegal plea deal. Epstein was then able to go reoffend, and Trump appointed him in 2017. So I don't want to hear the dude that was brought to the White House to cover up sexual abuse saying that there was, what are you trying to say?
And this again, the dude who was brought to the White House to cover up sexual abuse is Jack.
Here, yeah.
You gonna wipe your face? Can you just wipe that little thing?
Lame, and everyone knows it's lame too. Like no one is saying own. Like no one on the MAGA side thinks that this is coming from a position of strength. The minute you're going after like how he looks, it is just such a sign of weakness and unsteadiness, and yeah, it's not a good look.
That there was, what are you trying to say here? Yeah.
You gonna wipe your face? Can you just wipe that little thing off your face there a little bit? You got a little,
right, hold on a
mud
second.
on your face.
You have no points.
Hold on a second.
No.
It's just a complete victory, complete vindication. There's no substantive response to anything he said.
Can I add something?
you got a little
First
mud
of
on your
all,
face
I
there.
hear the MAGA bullshit detector going off every single time Jack opens his mouth. First of all, people like Jack would
And now he's got this. and look, super satisfied because now the conversation, and amazing pause. Now the conversation, because they got so personal and because he got under his skin and because they had this back and forth, he's triggered the other lefty to talk shit about Jack. And now everyone's just shitting on Jack. It's a complete W.
people who called Joe Biden a pedophile for sniffing hair, but yet we have Jeffrey Epstein on tape calling Donald Trump his best friend. They were hanging out together constantly. I've
His
spoken to
closest
Jeffrey
friend.
Epstein's brother
Do you want me
many
to go through the
times. They
list
were
of all
very
the
close.
Democrats?
Do you want me to go through it's not a position of strength.
That's who
I'm
he was
not done
friends
yet,
with.
Jack.
Piers, like
Jack,
we can
Jack,
go
that's
through all
Jack,
this again, but Piers,
Jack,
I know you've done
Jack,
this
I'm not done
million
yet. I didn't
times,
interrupt
and
you.
You've
Jack,
been a real reporter
Jack,
on this. These guys just want to
Jack.
You've been a real reporter, Piers, and he's trying to do the thing where he's like glazing Piers. Like, please, Piers, save me. We don't have to do this. We don't have to go through all the things that they're saying. Please save me, Piers. And that's trying to use Piers using the moderator as a crutch, as opposed to trying to like bring Piers into your confidence and like be like, oh, Piers, let's be part of the conversation. This is like surrender. Like, Piers, please, bail me out. I think it's a different and more weak version of trying to use Piers to your advantage. I don't think it's very effective.
politics. I'm trying to
Jack?
be serious here.
Jack,
Dude, you were at the White
Jack,
House
I'm
with
a talk
Epstein
show
files
host.
in your hand.
Yeah,
And he just repeats, like, this is not advancing anything, right? This is not addressing anything that this guy's saying, right? It's not addressing the fact that, you know, the substantive points about Trump's connection. He's just repeating what previously got under Jack's skin, which is you were at the White House being the shill for the administration. And again, this isn't a logical debate. He's just pushing his talking point in a very evocative and good way. And I just think this is really awesome.
just talked about it.
right, exactly, Jack. Jack, just you want to defend Donald Trump and wear the Donald Trump knee pads 24/7, but when it comes to a Democrat,
Yo! You guys know what he means by that? The Donald Trump knee pads? He's saying he wants to give Trump oral sex.
they're all pedophiles. But if Donald Trump is actually hanging out with Jeffrey Epstein and
So do you
Epstein
have like
calls
any
him
evidence
his
of
best
this? Like,
friend,
can you have like a source on that, bro?
Source, bro. Source.
No,
Give me,
because
like,
the
any
Pam Bondi
actual
won't release
evidence.
the
you wanna-
sources.
Actually, yeah, I do. The Maxwell trial, where it was
let's hear it.
learned that
Please,
he
show
was
us.
on the Epstein flight. Why don't you listen? It was in the trial, in the Maxwell trial, that he was on the flight log 7 times. We have Jeffrey Epstein on
Bill Clinton was on
audio
there 26
calling
times.
him his best friend. So here's my question to Jack.
But Bill Clinton is a sex offender. Okay. I mean, these guys will bite that bullet, I'm sure, in a second. I'm sure Adam will be like, yeah, I don't like Bill Clinton. But it just, the whataboutism here, not letting them talk, appealing to Piers to bail you out, as opposed to appealing to Piers to like raise a substantive point. I think this is all a disaster look for Jack Posobiec.
Jack,
And how many
if
times did Bill
Jeffrey
Clinton go
Epstein
to
was
the
on
islands?
audio,
And how many times did
Hey,
Jeffrey Epstein say
first
that
of all,
he was one of the
that's
founding
called
members of the
whataboutism.
Clinton Institute?
And
don't-
he calls it out. He calls it out too. This could not go worse, I think, for Jack.
defend
Clinton Goldman
Jack. If Jeffrey Epstein
this
was
all day
on
long, bro.
audio,
I can do this all day long. Like he's doing the fucking Captain America meme. It's the same kind of meme when he's doing like, this is unsat. I can do this all like, it's so cringe. It's so lame.
saying that Joe Biden was his best friend, that wouldn't concern you at all?
Man, these are
all
like
you do is
26
The sigh tactic. This is the President Sunday tactic when he's like, when he doesn't have anything to say, he's like, oh, yawn tactic or, you know, like that's the tactic. This is kind of like pizza tactics, but this is different. This is yawn / big sigh tactics. And it is such a tell.
Joe Biden was his best friend, that wouldn't concern you at all?
Man, these are
all
like
you do is
2016
deflect and you
talking
talk
points.
about
Like,
other
don't
people.
you guys have
This
anything
is like 2016 talking points.
new? Do you
I mean, my
Anything new?
line
Why
won't
about
they
the
release the
Epstein,
files?
but my line about the
Anything
Epstein
new?
circle of famous friends is, to me, that there's a clear line before his initial conviction, which was a complete stitch up in his favor, no question of that. There
A complete stitch up in his favor, no question about it. He's accusing Acosta of doing a cover up. And then the point goes through that Trump hired this guy to be the Secretary of Labor and then fired him when people were like, wait, didn't you give a sweetheart deal?
Jack, why won't they release the files then?
Well, hang on, Brian.
called for them to.
Hang on, Brian.
The
And the point I'm going to
files,
make is,
the files.
I do think if you continue to be a friend of Epstein, knowing he was a convicted pedophile after whatever it was, 2009 or so, as Prince Andrew did, for example, then I'm afraid that is seriously problematic. For those who were in his circle, of a wide circle of well-known people, from Bill Gates to Trump to all these, Bill Clinton, I mean, he hooked in everybody, but a lot of them had nothing to do with him, including Trump, I believe, after that conviction. But if you carried on seeing him as Andrew did, living at his house for a few days, years later, knowing he was a convicted pedophile, that is different. I mean, do we agree?
Yeah. I think that's
Yeah,
all been litigated.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. You can probably get me on, Doobie. Oh my God. Well, I have someone who has certain contact information, but I'd love to go on Piers Morgan. I think I do well, but that's just me, though. That's just me.
I certainly agree with what you're saying, Pierce, and your point there. But the point that I'm trying to make is there has to be a reason why they're not releasing the files. Why are they being so mum? Why is the list just magically disappeared?
This guy's doing a good job too, because the key to a lot of this conspiratorial thinking is a very like understandable question. Cui bono? Who benefits? That is the start of a lot of this conspiratorial type thinking. And it comes from a place of where you can even relate to it. Like, who benefits from the towers coming down? Now, that's a fine question to ask, but it's what starts to spiral. And when you put it back, when the conspiratorial people are in power, and says, who benefits from covering it up? It's just a very effective way to use the tropes that are so effective for these conspiratorial types against them.
And I think one can come to a
thank
very
you, Doobie.
logical conclusion, unless you're Jack and you defend Donald Trump 24/7, that maybe there might be something to do with the fact that Trump might be in these files and there might be some wrongdoing there, considering the fact that they were at one point best friends.
Well, they've
Or you
certainly,
can
they've
go along the
certainly, look,
lines of-
they've certainly gone as an administration from full bore. We're going to reveal everything, and it's really shocking. And there's going to have to be accountability. I mean, I had them on my show.
Right.
They've gone from that
Right.
position to suddenly no, there's nothing mysterious about his death. He definitely killed himself. Here's the CCTV footage. And there is no client list, and none of that is right. And actually, you know what? It's all over. And it is odd. I mean, John
Piers.
Again, John, you know, from with your intelligence hat on, does this? I mean, do you smell a rat here? Does this look like
this guy's a
there's
kook.
been a little bit of a closing of ranks to shut
I
this up?
do smell a rat.
Yes, I do smell a rat. And I'd like to know why no one in the media is talking about the investigation, or the fact that there should have been an investigation into whether or not Jeffrey Epstein was working for a foreign intelligence service. You know, let's say that.
So that's really interesting. So look, you've studied into this. What is the evidence that he might have been?
He is a textbook example
What is the evidence that he might have been? Watch him not answer this question.
of an access agent. You're, like I said the last time I was on the show, Piers, you're not going to recruit Bill Clinton. You're not going to recruit Bill Gates. You're not going to recruit Alan Dershowitz. But you can recruit someone who gets close to those people. You can give them something that you can hold over their heads if you have to in the end. And then you report back to your handlers everything that they say.
So what's the evidence that this is happening? You can't get Bill Clinton, you can't get Alan Dershowitz, but you can get someone close and they'll give you the information. Okay, what's the evidence?
In exchange, you get untold wealth and a house in the Caribbean and the biggest townhouse in Manhattan and a private plane. And that's a pretty good life, especially if you're a pedophile and you enjoy doing things like that. And nobody's talking about whether or not he was an access agent.
Yes, they are, dude. Come on, you're online enough to know that people are talking about that.
Yeah, I mean, that's really interesting. I mean, does the intelligence community believe that there is merit to that suggestion?
Yes, it does.
Yes, it does. Who are you? You're like an ex-CIA guy who quit during the Bush administration. How do you know the conclusion of the IC right now? This guy is so full of shit, it actually boggles the mind.
Community believe that there is merit to that suggestion?
Yes, it does. It does. But the problem here is the accusation.
Yes, it does. Believe me, bro. Like, based on what? What's your substantiation?
Is that he was an access agent for the Israelis. And that's something that the intelligence community really doesn't like to touch.
So some guy with no access anymore, who is famous for Al-Qaeda memes, is now saying that the IC definitely thinks that he was an intelligence agent, or at least there's a strong suspicion of it, based on no evidence that he's able to share, because they don't want to touch it because it's Israel. So more of the Zog memes. Thank you so much for the gifted membership.
Because we have this special relationship with Israel, not like a Five Eyes relationship like we have with the UK, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, but this special relationship where we share so much, we provide so much, we work with the Israelis on issues all around the region, at least around the world, and on a handful of issues. Why upset the balance over one dead file? Isn't it easier just to cover it up?
Brian.
And this is the typical conspiratorial thing. And just by the way, and again, I'm someone who's agnostic on the underlying there, but it's like, wouldn't it be easier, right? Wouldn't it be? And the reason is people don't want to, they want to feel secure. And for whatever reason, they feel more secure when it's part of like this grand operation or grand narrative. They feel more secure that 9/11 was planned by George Bush or by Israel than if it were just some like terrorists. And so this guy almost, I don't like this guy. I think that he engages in the same kind of like conspiratorial thinking that proves too much. It proves too much. You can do this kind of analysis. You can run it for COVID. You can run it for the vaccines. You can run it for basically every war that's ever happened. And if your mode of analysis always leads you to conspiracy, or can always reliably lead you to conspiracy, then it's just not useful for me if it's not based on evidence. Now, there are definitely some questions. I'm not saying you shouldn't have questions. I'm not saying that you should just believe the official accounts, but the level of certainty here, I think, is not matching what's been produced so far by the conspiracists. That's all I'm saying.
What do you think of that?
I believe that Jeffrey Epstein surrounded himself with a lot of powerful people. It is very, very possible that he could have been working for a government agency. Very, very possible as well. I would tend to agree with the fact that this needs to be investigated more. The media needs to talk about it more. And I don't think this is just a situation where Jeffrey Epstein was getting people to come on his island and sadly do horrible things to young girls. I think there's a lot more to this story. I think there's a lot of people hiding a lot of information. So I certainly agree with what he just said.
I mean,
I certainly agree that it was Israel. I agree with what you just said, that it was almost certainly Mossad. Wild. I don't agree with that at all.
Jack,
That he established that, other than he basically just said, isn't it weird?
one of the conspiracy theories I've seen online a lot in the last few days is it's not a coincidence that Netanyahu is coming to the White House, that he's been there, I think, 3 times.
Piers, ever since Piers said that it was a genocide, now he starts Zog posting.
In the last few months, he has a much better relationship with Trump now than they did when he pissed Trump off by going to see Biden and so on. And that suddenly the Epstein files disappear. If you were working as a conspiracy theorist,
the government is not saying that the files disappeared. The government is saying they're not saying that we've lost anything. All of this is being muddled because of a failure of clarity of language. Again, I'm going to continue to fixate on this point. Because Epstein files means incriminating evidence of third parties or the government, now they're saying that the narrative is that the files, quote, disappeared. No one said that.
he was some kind of agent for the Israelis, which is not completely implausible, given all the connections he had. And no, has there been some tacit agreement with Netanyahu to get rid of this problem? I mean,
complete conjecture, by the way. Now, do I put it past Bibi or Trump or any of these people? No, but it's just complete conjecture. But it is very juicy timing for all of the people in that sphere of the MAGA base, and obviously it's going to get their jimmies rustled.
stranger things have happened.
I think the perception is horrible. I think the perception is absolutely horrible, and it puts a huge onus on the entire administration, and certainly coming from Pam Bondi for her mismanagement of this. I want to go back to something that...
This is the weasel shit that they have to do. It's a bad look. The management of the PR, stopping short of calling on Bondi to resign, because Trump's not calling for that. And so they have to do this kind of beta signaling thing. And they do it, by the way, with a bunch of stuff. Like when Trump is talking about potentially giving amnesty to illegal immigrants who are working on farms and in hotels and stuff, they have to go on on Twitter and be like, please, Trump, we trust you, but don't do this. Please. But if he ends up doing the thing, they're like, trust in Trump, guys, trust in Trump. They're complete beta cucks that, to the extent that they want their policy initiatives to be enforced, they have to go to e-begging on Twitter in a roundabout way and criticizing the people around Trump and the message and the optics. That's how they actually do the kind of critique that they want.
John was saying as well, but Ghislaine Maxwell's father, Robert, this is so Robert Maxwell is someone who's highly fingered in a lot of these conspiracies or a lot of these allegations. His entire career, there were allegation after allegation that he was involved somehow with Israeli intelligence, going all the way back even to the 1940s, and serious questions about some of the work that he did all the way through this. And then, of course, as it goes, she becomes the recruiter for Epstein. And so these questions have really gone deeper and deeper and deeper. And of course, there's no actual evidence or, just hearing of the evidence or release of the evidence, release of the file, a task force, even a press conference, and instead we get, we're just going to move on. And here's a press release on a Sunday night when it's a holiday here in the US.
Yeah, it is. I mean, Adam, it is just a bit weird, the whole thing. I can't quite get my head around this because they were so emphatic that this was going to be huge. And now it's nothing. It's not like even mini huge. It's nothing. There's nothing to see here.
Yeah, and to build on that, I can't tell if it would be worse if this was a cock-up or a conspiracy. Because if it's a cock-up, that means they were straight up lying to the American people the entire time about what they actually had, right? Or if it's a conspiracy, that means they have it and they hid it the entire time. I mean, either way, it looks really bad on the administration. And especially for an admin that is created this grounds that is like primed for conspiratorial thinking.
Yep.
A lot of the MAGA influencers were super ready, super excited.
And again, this is attacking Jack Posobiec once again. Adam is doing such a great job here. He's not overstaying his welcome. He doesn't come off as like a shrill Dem person. This is where I think people like Adam diverge from like Harry Sisson and Dean Withers and all these other types. Now, I actually like Harry Sisson, a lot of the stuff he does sometimes, but Harry Sisson comes across sometimes as a shill, and Dean Withers sometimes comes across as like unhinged. And so Adam, to me, comes across as much more of a straight shooter, and I think that people like Dean Withers and Harry Sisson can learn from what Adam is doing in coming across as more believable, more straight shooter, less kind of unhinged, and less of like a government shill sometimes. So I just want to praise Adam once again for not coming across as like a soy little cuck boy. Not saying that Harry and Dean always come across that way. Like I said, they both have their good moments too. I'm not saying that they're bad people. I'm not saying any of that. I just think that Adam, among this kind of newer generation, I'm very impressed by Adam's ability to compose himself and not be kind of cornered into coming across as DNC shill all the time. And I just want to stress, this new generation, they're doing their own thing. They have their TikTok debates. I'm not saying that they are always looking like shills. I'm not saying they don't have their good moments, but I've just been really impressed by Adam.
Excited for the Epstein files to release. So when you create the grounds that are perfect for conspiratorial thinking, and then you pull back, there are going to be a lot of conspiracies about the admin now.
You know, Jack, it's a confusing time to be in MAGA, isn't it? It must be, right? Because there's so much going on, which must be quite bemusing. You know, you're led up the hill of we're going to get all the dirt on Epstein. That disappears. You know, you've got the attack on Iran, which seems to fly in the face of everything Trump has said about foreign wars, foreign engagement, and so on. You've got a kind of war at the center of the party. You've got Elon Musk, who you were skeptical of, MAGA, and then he's the hero suddenly, and now he's the villain again. This is not an easy time for MAGA to get their heads around the consistent theme here.
Oh, Piers, what are you talking about? I love a fight. I'm always ready for a fight, and MAGA's always made of fighters. So if we got a
This is like he's trying to now paint it as, oh, this is all part of MAGA. This is all like, you can't try to sell me that this is all part of the plan. You can't do that. Why are you taking this line? Because it's a faux confidence that isn't believable.
fight if we're coming. And by the way, Charlie Kirk is out there today saying that there's a huge push for amnesty of these, the farm workers. And this was something that was mentioned.
Charlie Kirk is out there e-begging online, being like, please, Trump, don't listen to the farmers. And that's supposed to be MAGA's always ready for a fight. And Charlie Kirk said, please.
Rally over the weekend in Iowa, or I guess just before the weekend in Iowa. And so, look, if there's going to be a fight, then we're more than ready for a fight. And I know that I certainly am, and I'm not going
But don't
anywhere.
you have to know what you're really fighting for?
I'm fighting for the country. I'm fighting for America first.
No, I get that. But are you
America
fighting
first.
for deportations
Yes.
of every illegal immigrant in the United States, if that means
Yes.
that farms close all over the United States, for example?
Yes.
Yes, it is 100% across the board. When
Yes, we're calling for the destruction of the farming industry in the United States.
we were at the RNC in Milwaukee, we had mass deportations now signs. And by the way, that doesn't necessarily mean that they all need to be arrested. And I know that people have been crunching the numbers and saying, if you do this many arrests a day and that many, I think that self-deportations are something that really need to be worked on. I think the remittance tax that went through in the big, beautiful bill should have been higher. 1% is too low in my estimation. I think that should be 5%, 10%, or even 50%, because in some of these cases, that's exactly what's going on, is that they're here for economic reasons in the United States. And so if you put that,
But
put
doesn't
those
the
barriers to
United
an
States
economic,
economy
reason
need
being
a
here,
lot of them?
then they'll go home.
Isn't this the whole point about the farmer debate, is that actually farmers have gone to Trump in big numbers and said, if you deport every illegal, undocumented worker in the country, we're out of business.
Well, look, there can be a way for this to be done in a phased manner where they can get people in, and over time,
Sure,
it's not like it
Darful.
has to be, we're going to snap our fingers overnight and they're going to be gone. But absolutely, over time, 100%.
Brian, what do you think of that? I mean, it seems to me that Trump's had a lot of political wins. Whatever you think of him, the last 3-4 weeks, you could argue, have been the most successful politically that he may have had as a president. But it seems like on a lot of these issues, there's this dilemma which he's going to have to confront, and not least, I think, this issue of undocumented workers.
Well, it's interesting because Jack says MAGA is fighting for the country. So is fighting for the country giving the biggest tax breaks to the top 1% in the history of the nation?
Yes.
Is fighting for the country not giving people due process and people that have been living in this country for decades and ICE agents coming up to them, not identifying themselves, ripping them from their families right outside of the courtroom? They're trying to do the right thing, or sending people to El Salvador prisons with no criminal record. That's fighting for the country, while Donald Trump is doing this weird masturbation dance on July 4th when dozens of kids are missing in Texas. That's fighting for the country, Jack? No,
He was cool with everything until he's like masturbation dance. He's like, holy what did you just look at his face right now? I have never seen a more angry man.
sorry. That's
sorry,
the
he's doing
opposite
what
of fighting
kind of
for the
dance?
country, okay? You know exactly what dance I'm talking about, Jack. I'm sure you
No,
do it
I
every night
don't.
before you go to sleep.
Oh, he has the better of that exchange.
Yeah, I think you do, Jack.
I think that's
you
what
do,
you're
Jack. But
thinking
the point
about
that
when
I was
you go to sleep, man.
okay, well, the point that I was trying to make, Jack, is you said that MAGA Republicans are fighting for the country.
See, this isn't effective, right? That was obviously like a throwaway little comment, the comment on his appearance. It's not effective to just be doing these kinds of personal attacks or going after people because of their doing masturbation dance or whatever. Like, it just feels like coming from a position of weakness again. And I don't even think that like MAGA people are like, wow, he just totally owned him there. Yeah, no, like Trump doesn't do a masturbation dance. You do a masturbation dance. Yeah, good one.
Deporting
Yeah,
people
so
and ripping
illegal
up
aliens
parts of the
aren't part of my
Constitution.
country, and in short work, they won't be because those aren't
Are
Americans.
farmers part of your country, bro?
Those are illegals.
So they don't deserve due process? What does it say in the Constitution? It says every single person, not citizen, not non-citizen. The Constitution says
Subject to
every
the jurisdiction
person, okay?
of.
So Jack Posobiec is such a mouth-breathing tard. He said subject to the jurisdiction of, referring to the citizenship clause of the 14th Amendment. But of course, we're not talking about the citizenship clause of the 14th Amendment, dipshit. We're talking about the due process clause of the 14th and 5th Amendments, which of course don't have that proviso of subject to the jurisdiction thereof. So these guys, in addition to being bad faith hacks, in addition to being f***ing whores for money, in addition to all of that shit and being government shills, they're also f***ing stupid. And this includes, by the way, Charlie Kirk and these types. They hear these little memes about of certain constitutional issues and they apply them where they don't belong because they're idiots. And so he's applying the subject to the jurisdiction thereof proviso in the citizenship clause to the due process clause analysis. And again, just showing his ass about how much of a f***ing idiot he is.
It says subject to the jurisdiction.
Okay, so
of.
you think that
Legal aliens are not
so
subject
someone
to the
should be
jurisdiction.
deported to it?
We actually
So
went through
you're
this last
okay
time
with
we were
people
here.
being?
You don't have any new
So you're
talking
okay
points,
with
do you?
someone being Yeah, no, it's not a talking point. It's called reality, Jack. You don't live in reality. You live in MAGA world, and you take
I
the
live in
Ben
reality.
Shapiro
In my
talking
reality,
points.
they're all going home.
No, you don't. No, you don't. No, you don't. Oh,
Can I
they're
ask,
all
Jack,
going home.
if-
So you're okay. Go ahead, Adam.
I was going to say, can I ask if we had studies proving, which we do, that these farm workers lead to increased economic output, would you still want to deport illegal farm workers? How is that putting America first when it hurts the economy?
Wow, it's
like Piers said,
amazing
farm
that we're
workers are
hearing the
coming to Trump.
Democrats say, "Oh, you're just going on the side of big ag and big corporations." Like here, I'm the MAGA guy.
By the way, I think this is kind of, I mean, he knows the answer here, which is that, yes, they'll eat the economic cost. But trying to construe the issues of employment in these industries as, oh, just defending big ag, oh, just defending big industry. It's a little bit, I think, undermining the problem facing a lot of, sometimes even just like small farms, sometimes even medium-sized farms. And frankly, the security interest of the United States, where we want to shore up a lot of these industries for national security reasons, like, producing our own food. So even though this is a little bit of a risky play here, because Adam opens himself up to, oh, all you care about is economics. The country's more than economics. And so I don't love this point from Adam because he's opening himself up for a lot of easy counters. I think Adam looks out a lot here that Jack Posobiec doesn't make the most of it, and I think starts to like say economy doesn't matter, prices don't matter, and I think that that is not the right way to approach this if you're from the MAGA perspective.
Guy, and I'm the one who's saying,
You're not
let's do
answering my
something
question.
for the
How is
working
that
class
helping
of
the
this country.
economy
Let's do something
if
for
it's
the
less
middle class.
economic
But man,
output?
you guys just love kissing the boots of big corporate America, huh?
No, I like the economy.
What are you
I like having
talking
more
about?
economic output. And
How does
when we
the
have
boot
studies
leather
No, no, no.
saying,
taste? Wall Street
Here's-
boot
no,
leather,
this
corporate
isn't about
America
Jack.
boot leather.
Do you know
How
what
does
I
it
would have
taste?
done if I was Trump? I'd have taken a massive victory lap over the stunning success in the southern border, reducing the numbers coming over illegally to almost negligible numbers
By doing illegal things.
from the millions that came in under Biden. I'd have taken a massive victory lap, which
Jack.
would have been applauded by, I think, most Americans. And then I would have targeted the people who were in the country illegally who committed crimes. And and that was the first thing he said, I remember, as a campaign thing. When you get to a white
And that's what Biden et al. Were doing, right? So Biden was targeting people with criminal histories and people who are removable because they've done crimes. But the strategy of mass deportation necessitates that you not do that, right? The strategy of mass deportation, of trying to increase the numbers arbitrarily, that strategy is premised on not prioritizing people who do crimes. You know, that is necessitated by that strategy. You can go after low-hanging fruit all you want, but targeting people with crimes, sometimes, you know, you're going to have to put more resources to get the people who are harder to find, perhaps, but going after people who are very easy to find, in other words, prioritizing numbers, means you're going after people who are visible to you, not necessarily people who are doing the crimes, and that's going to funnel resources to not targeting, right? Like, all I'm basically saying here is the strategy that the administration is engaged in is specifically not prioritizing criminals. So Piers has a point here.
a category of people, and you
Thank
simply
you,
said we're going to
Awesome Sauce.
deport everyone who's undocumented in America. I mean, you could potentially be looking at 100 million people. Nobody really knows, right?
Wouldn't that be something?
But the idea
100 million people.
that won't rip the heart out of America's economy in industries like farming, I think, is for the birds. So
100 million people. So Piers thinks that, wait, I want to make sure I understood that right.
is undocumented in America. I mean, you're basically, and you simply said we're going to deport everyone who's undocumented in America. I mean, you could potentially be looking at 100 million people. Nobody really knows.
100 million people in the country undocumented? Does anyone say that? Where is Piers get? This is crazy.
Right?
Wouldn't that be something?
But the idea that won't rip the heart out of America's economy in industries like
Can you imagine if it were true, what it would take to deport 100 million people? What's the population of Russia? Russia's population right now, according to Wikipedia, is 140 million people. Egypt's population is 100 million people. To think that you could practically deport 100 million people, or that 100 million people who are undocumented exist in the United States, is so deranged. It is incredibly deranged. America's population right now is 340 million people. You're basically saying a third of the population is undocumented in the United States. First of all, right, like even the notion that you could deport such an amount of people logistically is insane. What that would entail. It means every third person you find on the street is an undocumented person, right? Then the notion that this wouldn't destroy the economy. A third of the workforce, probably higher because illegal immigrants are probably more likely to be in the working age population than American citizens or legal residents, all else equal. So this whole thing is like a bizarro land. I feel like I'm taking crazy pills. All right, so I'm glazing at him a little bit here, but I think this was a very good appearance. I think it was very balanced, and I think he got some really good shots in at Jack Posobiec, got under his skin and really got the better of that exchange. I'm very impressed with that, and I'm hoping to see more good things from Adam. So yeah, that was my coverage of the Piers Morgan debate on the Epstein stuff.